There are many different ways to determine the distance between two objects. In addition, there are just as many tools that you can use. Mathematically, if you want to determine the distance between 2 points on a coordinate plane, you use the distance formula. D equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. When you know the coordinates of the 2 points that you're trying to find the distance between, just substitute them into the equation. It doesn't really matter which point is x1, y1, or which one is x2, y2, just so long as you keep them together. Whichever set you use for 1, use it for both x1 and y1, and whichever set you use as 2, use both x2 and y2 from that set. 1. Find the distance between the given points on this graph, appearing on your screen right now. The coordinates of the 2 points are x1, y1 equals 2, 5, x2, y2 equals 9, 8. To solve this equation, you just need to substitute the numbers into the distance formula that we looked at earlier. From there, all you have to do is simplify. D equals the square root of 9 minus 2 squared plus 8 minus 5 squared. D equals the square root of 7 squared plus 3 squared. D equals the square root of 49 plus 9. D equals the square root of 58. D equals 7.6. Example 2. Find the distance between the 2 points on the graph appearing on your screen. For this example, the points are -1, 2, and 2, 1. When using the distance formula with negative numbers, it's really important to work carefully so you don't lose the negative along the way. Let's plug in our values to the distance formula, and then simplify, just like before. D equals the square root of 2 minus -1 squared plus 1 minus 2 squared. D equals the square root of 3 squared plus -1 squared. D equals the square root of 9 plus 1. D equals the square root of 10. D equals 3.2. If you're trying to determine the distance between 2 points that are on a straight horizontal or vertical line, you can just count the number of spaces between the points. The distance formula will work in this way as well. However, the possibilities for errors will increase as well. 3. Find the distance between the 2 points on this next graph appearing on screen. Since the points are in a straight line, it's pretty easy to count the distance between them and get the answer, which is 3. But let's use the distance formula as well to prove our answer. The 2 points on the graph are 1, 6 and 1, 3. D equals the square root of 1 minus 1 squared plus 6 minus 3 squared. D equals the square root of 0 squared plus 3 squared. D equals the square root of 0 plus 9. D equals the square root of 9. D equals 3. The distance formula is derived from the Pythagorean theorem. You might recall that the Pythagorean theorem can be used to find the length of any one side of a right triangle when you know the other 2 sides. To use this formula to get to the distance formula, simply follow these steps. Let's use the previous example to work this through. 1. Draw a right triangle with the hypotenuse being the distance that you're trying to determine, like you can see in the graph on your screen. 2. To determine the length of the 2 legs, you can just count boxes. 3. Then you solve for x using the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. 3 squared plus 1 squared equals x squared. 9 plus 1 equals x squared. 10 equals x squared. Square root of 10 equals x. 3.2 equals x. If you perform this same calculation using x1, y1 and x2, y2 as the points of the hypotenuse, which you may recall are the points you're trying to determine the distance between, you can derive the distance formula. A equals x2 minus x1, or the distance between the x points. B equals y2 minus y1, distance between the y points. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. X2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared equals c squared. C equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. The distance between the 2 points equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now that this lesson is finished, your goal should be to understand the following information. Determine how to measure distance with math. Identify the distance formula, which is what you use if you want to determine the distance between 2 points on a coordinate plane. Describe examples of the formula, and explain where the formula originates. Mathematical distance is defined as the amount of space between 2 points. The distance can be calculated using the distance formula, which is just a derivation of the Pythagorean theorem, which is used to find the length of any one side of a right triangle when you know the other 2 sides.